Sarah had always felt a deep connection to the stars. Ever since she was a little girl, she'd gaze up at the night sky, wondering what might be out there. She spent countless hours learning about space, reading about distant galaxies, and dreaming about the unknown. But nothing had prepared her for what happened on that quiet night. It started with the lights. At first, it was just a shimmer, a strange ripple across the sky, like the air itself was bending. Sarah, perched on her balcony, assumed it was some kind of celestial phenomenon, maybe a meteor shower or a strange weather pattern. But the lights grew brighter, more intense, and before long, she realized that they weren't coming from any known source. The lights danced across the sky, making patterns she couldn't comprehend, as though trying to communicate. Her heart pounded in her chest. This wasn't normal. The air felt charged with electricity, and she could hear a hum, almost like the faint sound of a voice just beneath the surface of her consciousness. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend, Mark. "You seeing this?" it read. Sarah rushed outside, her feet hitting the cold ground. Mark was already standing in his backyard, staring up in awe, his face lit by the strange glow in the sky. Without a word, he pointed to the horizon. A ship. At first, she thought it was a plane, but it moved too smoothly, too quietly. The craft hovered above them, suspended in mid-air, like a massive, silent shadow. Then, the lights began to pulse, shifting from brilliant blues to deep purples and greens. "Mark," she whispered, "this isn't real." But it was. For what felt like hours, Sarah and Mark watched as the ship hovered, then slowly descended, landing in a field near their homes. The ground trembled lightly underfoot, and a soft wind blew from the direction of the craft. They couldn't move, couldn't think straight. The sight before them was too overwhelming. The ship's door opened with a hiss. And that's when they saw them. Tall figures, clad in shimmering silver suits, stepped out from the craft. Their skin was smooth, almost translucent, and their eyes, wide and dark, seemed to penetrate everything around them. They walked with an eerie grace, their movements synchronized, like they were one organism. For a moment, all Sarah could do was stare. Then, she found her voice. "What do you want?" The tallest of the figures, its eyes glowing faintly, looked directly at her. It tilted its head, as though understanding her question but not quite able to respond in the way she expected. Then, through her mind, she heard a voice. It wasn't spoken aloud but rather projected directly into her thoughts. "We seek understanding." The words echoed in her mind, sending a chill down her spine. Mark stood frozen beside her, mouth agape. His voice, shaking, was the first to break the silence. "Understanding? What do you mean?" he asked, but the alien figure didn't answer directly. Instead, it stepped closer, and Sarah felt an odd pull towards it, like some invisible force was guiding her. She hesitated but took a step forward, driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity. The alien gestured to the sky, then to the earth. "We are travelers," it said, not through words but through images. Sarah could see vivid flashes of distant planets, galaxies, and otherworldly landscapes. The aliens had seen worlds far beyond their own, and now, they were here to make contact. They were explorers, seeking to understand the inhabitants of this planet. They had traveled across the stars, but Earth was the next step in their journey. Before Sarah could respond, she felt a sudden tug at her thoughts. The alien was probing her mind, trying to understand her in a way no human ever could. It wasn't malicious, but it was intrusive. Images of her memories flashed before her eyes, her childhood, her fears, her hopes. It was as though the alien was scanning her soul. Then, it withdrew, and the connection broke. "We do not wish harm," it said, its voice now echoing in the air around them. "We seek knowledge, not conflict." But the tension was palpable. Sarah could feel her pulse racing. The idea that these beings were so advanced, so beyond anything humanity had known, filled her with awe but also a sense of dread. What did they want from them? Why now? Without another word, the aliens turned and retreated back to their ship. The lights flickered again, and then, with a sound that felt like a deep hum in the ground, the ship took off, disappearing into the night sky as if it had never been there. Sarah and Mark stood in stunned silence for a long time. The next few days were a blur. News outlets had picked up on the strange lights in the sky, but no one could explain what had happened. Governments issued vague statements, dismissing the event as a hoax or a military test gone wrong. But Sarah knew better. She and Mark had seen something real, something otherworldly. Then came the whispers. People began talking about the encounter, sharing their own stories of strange occurrences. Some claimed to have had similar visions, others reported seeing odd lights in the sky. It was clear that the aliens weren't the only ones reaching out. It seemed like the entire world was being affected. Sarah couldn't sleep. Her dreams were filled with flashes of the aliens, their faces haunting her as she relived the connection. The images they had shown her, their journey across the stars, played over and over in her mind. But the more she thought about it, the more she wondered, were the aliens truly here to help? Or was there something more sinister at play? The next time she and Mark met, they were shaken, unsure of what to do with the knowledge they had gained. Mark had been researching everything he could find about extraterrestrial life. He pulled up articles, videos, and conspiracy theories, trying to make sense of the bizarre encounter. But the deeper he dug, the more unsettling the theories became. "We don't know what they're capable of," Mark said one night, looking at Sarah with a mixture of fear and excitement. "What if they've been watching us for years? What if they've been influencing our world from the shadows?" Sarah shook her head, trying to stay calm. "I don't think that's it. They said they wanted to understand. They didn't mean us harm." But Mark wasn't so sure. He'd found reports of other sightings, smaller encounters, some of which ended badly. People who had come in contact with the aliens had started acting differently, almost as though their minds had been altered. Some were reported to be in a trance-like state, while others had vanished without a trace. Just as Sarah was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the paranoia that had begun to spread, something unexpected happened. Another ship appeared. This time, it was closer. The lights in the sky were undeniable, there was no mistaking it. This time, Sarah wasn't going to wait for them to come to her. She wanted answers, and she knew she had to act quickly. Mark was hesitant, but Sarah convinced him. Together, they headed to the location where the ship had been spotted. As they approached the field, they saw the ship descending slowly. But this time, there was no graceful landing. The ship wobbled as it descended, and the ground beneath them trembled violently. It landed with a loud crash. Out of the smoke and dust, the same aliens appeared. But something was different. They looked hurt. Their movements were slow, as if they were struggling to stay upright. "We are not what we seem," the tallest one said, its voice shaky and strained. "We need help." The revelation stunned Sarah. These beings, who had seemed so powerful, so advanced, were in need of help. They were not invincible. They were not gods. They were just another species, facing a crisis of their own. Through their connection, Sarah was shown flashes of the alien world, its once thriving cities, now crumbling under the weight of a planet in decay. Their resources had been depleted, their atmosphere was no longer sustainable, and they were on the brink of extinction. They had traveled across the stars in search of a new home, a new world to inhabit. Earth, it seemed, was their last hope. But as Sarah began to understand their plight, she also saw the darker side of their mission. Their arrival wasn't just about seeking refuge, it was about taking something from Earth, something they believed would save their species. They had already begun experimenting on humans, gathering data, altering minds, and creating strange hybrid creatures. The truth was chilling. The aliens weren't just here to learn, they were here to conquer. The realization hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. These beings weren't as innocent as they had appeared. They had manipulated the events of the past few days, drawing people in with their peaceful appearance, but now their true intentions were becoming clear. Sarah felt a surge of determination. She couldn't let them take over Earth. Not like this. But as she stood there, grappling with the magnitude of the situation, the alien in front of her spoke again, its voice filled with desperation. "If you do not help us, we will not survive," it said. "But if you do, your world will never be the same. We offer you the stars, but at a cost." The weight of the decision pressed down on Sarah. She looked at Mark, who was as shaken as she was. They had to decide, help the aliens and risk their own world's future, or refuse and watch them perish. But Sarah already knew what she had to do. She would help, but she would not allow humanity to fall under their control. It was time for a new kind of alliance, one where both sides could coexist. The aliens would help Earth survive, but it would be on their terms, and humanity would never forget the price they had paid.